much pain is enough to make up for irreparable harm? I don't know that you ever achieve that. I don't know.
Visiting death row and seeing the people there, there's no question in my mind that that is cruel and unusual punishment in itself.
Our culture, in which so many people claim to be Christian, seems to have left mercy and grace out of the justice system almost altogether, and particularly where it comes to capital cases.
David Lee Powell was born in Texas in 1951. He spent his youth in the country where he lived on a dairy farm. His family were devout Catholics and were well known and respected in their community. He was a gifted student with dreams of becoming a doctor or a scientist.
I had wanted to be a doctor. I felt I had the intellectual strength to make a difference in a lot of areas, but that might be an area where I could more directly help people and come into contact with people.
David was remembered as always being gentle, quick to jump in when anyone needed help, the kind of kid that is always bringing home strays.
He was very helpful. He wanted to work. He wanted to help his mother. He would frequently say, "Mom, you just stay in bed today. I'll take care of your job milking the cows." He was real kind to the cows, too. I mean, when he brought the cows in, he would say, "Hey, come in, cow, very, very calmly and very sweetly.
He would say, "Do you need some help?" And I said, "Yeah, I really need some help. Desperately need some help, or I'm going to flunk this test." And he would help. He was very, very patient.
Everyone knew how bright he was in school, and his teachers were all really impressed with his academic skills.
He graduated as valedictorian of his class at age 16. He became an honor student at the University of Texas, excelling in physics and math. Austin, Texas in 1968 was a big change from the country life David had been accustomed to. His college counselor at the time said about him, "He's one of the greenest kids I've ever met."
He was just a sweetheart and well-liked and well thought of.
He was generous and unselfish and kind and caring toward his friends and toward other people.
He'd been this very bright student at the University of Texas and was part of the youth movement, I guess, in the late 60s or whatever.
We wanted a better world, and we believed it was possible to make that better world. And we actually believed that we were going to do it. And yes, David Powell was very much a part of that.
I came of age in the late 60s, really. And that was a time of great cultural ferment and questioning of values, and a time of great idealism. And I, of course, was infected with the spirit of the times like everybody else, or like a lot of people at any rate.
David became involved in student activism and was seduced by all the wildness that came with it, including drugs.
I was in the legislature in the late 60s and early 70s, and I remember the real hostility toward kids. There was no question about it.
The sense of idealism was left behind as the 60s became the violent 70s. Methamphetamine entered the picture, and David was lost.
Drugs did him in. Did me too. Did me in too.
He got hooked on the drugs and became essentially insane.
He had become severely strung out on amphetamines.
They were terrible drug addicts with a terrible drug that had them by the throat. And he knew it. Even then, sick as he was, he knew it. He knew that he had to get off that drug. He went to doctors. They testified at his trial. Get me off these drugs. And they prescribed the wrong drugs, things that made it worse.
Well, the doctor gave him the drugs he wanted. Later on, I found out the doctor was a druggie himself, and the Texas Medical Association removed his license.
By May 1978, he and his girlfriend Sheila Minert were both serious drug addicts, completely strung out on meth. They were both arrested for the murder of Officer Oblanedo.
I probably hadn't seen David for a couple of years when I heard about what had happened. And I was just, first of all, I didn't believe it was the same David Powell.
The David Lee Powell who committed that act of violence was not the same person as the David Lee Powell who has comprised the overwhelming majority of the rest of his life, both before and after that incident.
Someone who went to college, someone who was intelligent and articulate, someone who had a lot of potential, but someone who started making some wrong choices about drugs and the people he was associating with, and one step led to another to put him in the place where he was.
One tries to make oneself worthy. Of forgiveness. Worthy of acceptance and respect. To maintain some kind of dignity.